Hey there, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Chats with Hannah at the Playdate community. Today, we're going to be chatting with Priyanka George, who is a mom to three. Before I ask her to share with us more about her, um, I think I know Priyanka from way back, I think to when we were kids. One of the really sweet things that I remember about you is you were one of the first, like very few people to visit me at my hostel when I was in Mumbai studying. And very few who've got to see my small, messy room. And you were so comfortable with it and just put me so much at ease. And I remember the chat we had after that. So I'm so glad and so honored to be able to have you and have you share your thoughts and just your experience with us today. So
thanks, Anne.
Would you like to share with us, a little bit about your journey and in parenting and just about you?
Okay. I'm married to Josh, and we've been married for 10 years now. We have 3 children. So our firstborn was born 2 years after we were married. So he's 8 now. Then our next one came 1 year, 9 months later, and she's a girl. She's 6, Anaya. And our youngest, Vian, was born 2 years ago. So there's 5 years difference between Anaya and Vian. So we've been, as parents, we've been very intentional about the journey. Both of us are very intentional in the way we bring up our children. And from Joel's time to Vian's time, we have changed a lot in our parenting style. So there's lots of stuff we've learned along the way and put into practice.
Yeah, I can imagine. Things we tell ourselves we're not going to do ever if we have children changes with the first child. Things we would do again changes with the second child. So I can totally imagine just being a mom to 3 and how that must have changed so much, right? There's so much experience there and there's so much of other stuff. So when a second or third baby enters the whole existing family dynamics, right? There's so much of change that's there. Obviously, like even with parents, but also with the older sibling, right? There's suddenly this pressure for them to just comply with everything, to be a good role model or to stop throwing tantrums, and now they're big and now, there's just so much. So what has been your thoughts or your experience with that?
Yeah, so it's very different for all 3. So when after Anaya was born, for Joel was just 1 year, 9 months. So he was still a baby when she came in. And so the adjustment between them was very different. And we also made a big move when she was 3 months. So that was another big adjustment time. And then again, between Anaya and Vian, there was, because 5 years was there. So between Joel and Vian was 7 years. So again, it was a whole different dynamic between the second and the third as well. But that was something we slowly figured out. I think we made a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and we had to ask them to forgive us and help us through this process. But it's been a journey. And so I know between Joel and Anaya, it was just so they literally grew up together. They almost grew up as twins because as they grew older, they were doing a lot of stuff together. But Joel was his personality. He's a very sweet-natured boy. And so he's a responsible boy by nature. I think he is that kind. I'm sure being the first child also makes a difference to that. But and I also was very different. So she is like a firecracker. She's this very emotional. She's had a lot of tantrums, and he's been the sort of good boy. So I remember one of our friends told us that she said, sometimes I see the way y'all deal with Joel, and being a first child myself, I sort of feel for him. I feel like you're giving him a lot more responsibility. You're putting a lot more on him than his age. And Josh and I really took that to heart, and we realized that we were doing that a lot more. We were sort of making him act older than he had to be. And after my friend, we're so grateful that we had friends in our lives who could tell us things like that. And we really made an intentional change to not ask him to do too many things and to remember that he's still a child as well. So that was there between the two of them. But on the flip side, I also think it helped them. It helped them grow as individuals, having younger siblings, especially Anaya, because she was the youngest, and she was the youngest for 5 years before Vian came. So having a younger sibling, I felt really helped her grow and become a much nicer person, become a much calmer person. So I feel like having a third child again brought a lot of good change into our family, even for their own development and growth.
So, what about sibling rivalry? Like, have you encountered it, or like, what are your thoughts? Yeah, maybe.
Yes, I think that's something we've not really had to struggle with, and I think we're lucky as parents to not have that, because I know in many families it is quite a big thing. But I think there's a couple of things even when I spoke to my mom, and my mom was talking about our family dynamics and how it was different from when we were growing up. And I think one of the things has to do a lot with my husband and the kind of person he is, the training he's had in psychology and stuff like that. And he's a far more emotionally attuned person. So he's very aware of the children's emotions and what's going on with them. I'm more strict, and I like structure, and I like things to go in a certain way. But he's far more aware of their feelings. And I think that's made a big difference to our family environment and things that happen at home, because it's peaceful. By and large, even between Josh and me, there is a lot of understanding, and the children see that. And even when they are agitated, he's calm and he's able to talk to them and, help them come through that. So I think that, I feel, makes a difference to the atmosphere in the house, makes a difference to the fighting between them. I think that's one thing. And the other thing is just putting them on the same team. So rather than, it's very easy when you have 2 or 3 children at home to compare them or say, be like this one or do this. But instead of that, to make them work together as a team. So whether it's when they're eating food, instead of saying, let's see who finishes faster, we'll say, okay, there's 10 minutes. We'll all try and finish quickly so that we can play a game after that, So, and we can only play a game when everyone finishes. So there isn't a, let's see who does it faster thing, but we're all doing it together. Or even when they have to clean their room, rather than giving them, you have to do this, you have to do that. Both of you are on the same team. You'll need to finish cleaning the room in this much time. So things like that, I feel, help them to play together more, help them to be. I mean, we have seasons. We definitely have seasons where they fight more. But we find that when the atmosphere in the house is peaceful, they are far more peaceful.
Yeah, I think that is so true. And I think, I think both tips are really helpful. I think even the one, because I think we tend to do that, right? Because we want the other one to finish faster. We want them to actually finish. So like a race might actually help them eat faster, And I think it's like those subtle things that can actually make such a big difference, right? It's because as kids, they take everything to heart, right? Everything is so literal, and it can really shape how they think or just how they behave. So thanks for sharing that. My next question is, so as parents, with each new baby getting added to the family, there's this love that we never knew existed sort of just coming around, right? And but there are moments and times where we might possibly prefer one child over the other or show our bias towards one child. And it's most likely when, one child is possibly not complying to what we want, and so we sort of favor the other child. Even that can cause a lot of just psychological issues with them, or just rivalry, right? So what would you think about it, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is something that's very important for us as parents to not show that. And as you said, there are moments where it can come across, especially I found when a child is similar to me, I tend to be able to connect better with the child, and but to just remember that each child is so unique, and to very intentionally not do that, because as you said, it's psychologically very damaging, especially if the kids pick that up. And we've tried to be careful about that. So even like people may ask, who do you like better, your dad or your mama? Questions like that. But we're very, we would go to the adult and say, don't do that, don't pit us against the children. And in the same way, don't pit the children against us, so I think we are also careful in how we deal with them. And I think just having two parents makes a big difference, because when one is doing something, the other one can always bring in correction and help. Sometimes my husband has said, I feel you're not being patient with Joel, like just try and understand him more, things like that. So I feel like that really helps in the way we deal with the children, and to not let any of them feel like we're favoring anyone.
Yeah, I think so. What I'm actually getting from this is that that parenting is teamwork, right? It's both doing it together and not just one. I mean, it's difficult. It's more difficult if one has to, because the burden of parenting is huge, right? I mean, it's a wonderful experience in all, but it can be frustrating and tiring, and especially in those moments.
And sometimes even it just like when one parent has had too much, there are those moments where you're just so overwhelmed, and the other parent steps in and says, okay, I think you need a break, just go out, go have a coffee, just be by yourself for some time, and then come back. So sometimes it just helps taking that break. So when both parents are involved and can do that, like I know personally, I've even done overnight trips and gone out. I've done 2 days away from the kids, and that's really helped when you come back and you're able to like look at things a lot better. So as you said, parenting is very much teamwork.
What is a funny story in your parenting journey?
Okay, there's so many children.
I can imagine. 2 or 3 also will do.
I remember there was this time when Joel was and I was just born. She was a baby, 1 month maybe. And Joel, like I said, he was still a baby, 1 year, 9 months. And we had finally got him into sleeping well. He had a good night routine. And we had even moved out of our bedroom, so that he had his space. Instead of moving him out, we let him be, because we just had a 1-bedroom flat. So we kept him in the bedroom and we moved into the hall. So we slept in the hall with the baby. So he had his space the same. And we had a really difficult night with Anaya. She had been crying all night awake, and between Josh and me, we were trying to manage her. And finally, at about 5, she slept. And we were so relieved, like when your child falls asleep, it's like such a relief. And then just as she had fallen asleep, we thought, okay, we have 2 more hours before Joel wakes up. He wakes up at 7. So we're like, we have 2 more hours. Let's quickly try and sleep. We just put her down. We got into bed, and suddenly this 1 year, 9, 10-month-old child comes running up. Hi, mommy. Hi, daddy. And that was his morning wake up. He had felt this was morning time, and he wants to be awake. So we didn't know whether to laugh or whether to cry. And I still remember his cute little face. Hi, mommy. Hi, daddy.
So refreshed from a night's sleep, right? Oblivious to what happened in the hall.
Both of us have been up the whole night. But,
oh man, how did that end?
I think one of us just had to stay up with him, and then with the other one woke up. I think I slept and Josh was awake. Then he slept and I took over. So.
I can totally imagine that. Yeah, I think teamwork helps there as well, right? Like you need the other partner or like someone to. I think we felt that too. So my second, Myra, she is 2 months old. And so the initial, I think the 6 weeks is just like all over the place, right? And and Eliza's had to be so considerate, and she's older as well. Like she's 3, so she's more understanding, which I'm actually quite grateful for. So she's able to actually play by herself for some time as well. So I can sleep. But I think Jimit had to bear a lot of just her sort of invading his space, because I've needed to have my little bit of rest and sanity so I can, be back there. So yeah. Okay, so my next question is, what is 5 tips that you would give parents who are embarking on this journey of, having another child, whether it's the second or the third or even more than that? So what are your 5 tips or just advice or suggestions that you would offer?
Okay. I think the first thing is prepare the child. However young the child is. So like I said, Joel was just 1 year, 2 months when 1 year. We just completed his first birthday when I was conceived. And so right from that time, we started preparing him. We started talking to him. And similarly, when for our youngest one was much easier because they were, Joel was 6 and Anaya was 4. So they were at a much older age. But we kept talking to them, and at whatever level they are. So say with Joel, we would show pictures of babies and like what it is like in the womb, and that there's a small baby growing. And there are these apps now where you can see every week what the progress is. And we even managed to take them for a scan, and they got to see the baby, the ultrasound and things like that. So really get them excited, and even the announcement of telling the world that the thing was made by them. So they were really involved in the process. I remember for Joel, because he was a baby, we were aware that we didn't want to have too many changes, because that is between 1 year, 10 months to about 2.5 is a time of a lot of development. So we were aware of that. So we tried to get him to sleep by himself earlier. So we got him into that routine of not sleeping with us on the bed. He had his own separate bed and his space, as well as learning toilet training. We started earlier so that, there wasn't too many new changes for him as well at that time. So prepare the child as much, whatever way you can, prepare the child for the arrival of the baby. The second thing is involve them as much as you can. I know this is quite difficult because sometimes they're just so messy, and if you put powder, they'll just chuck the whole thing over and things like that. But allow them to do that. Let them fold the baby's clothes or bring you a diaper, whatever they can do in their little way, or play with the baby alone for a little while. I mean, supervise them, but sort of let them feel that they are important. They're doing something for the baby. So even though it may not be it may be easier for you to just do it, but let them get involved as much as you can. Then if you have help at home, if you have your mother or your mother-in-law or a servant or something, let them look after the baby, and you try and spend time with your older child. I found that was an advice somebody gave me, and I found it very helpful because the baby still doesn't understand. It's not like, and you're anyway feeding the child so much, giving the child so much time. But for the older child, there is so much adjustment. So, spend that time with them as much as you can. Let somebody else be with the baby and do other things for the baby, and you try and give that time to your older child. Then the fourth thing is be patient with your child. Just try and understand that there is so much change. No matter how you prepare the child, a new person coming into the world is going to be so difficult for them. I mean, I'm just trying to think of it like if for me, somebody loved me unconditionally and I was the most important thing to that person, and suddenly a new person comes in and they become as important as me, or maybe even more important, because that's how a child would perceive it at that point. So it's so emotionally the child has to go through so much just having a new child enter into the dynamic. So I think just be patient and understand the child will act out, the child will go through a lot of emotions, but be easy on the child and try not to introduce more changes than necessary. Like I was saying, about if your child is at a time where you're potty training, maybe delay that for a bit. Don't try and, introduce those things for the child at that moment. At least I would say 6 months, 7 months is how long it takes for a child to adjust to a new baby. So be patient with the child. Don't be too strict with them. Don't correct them a lot. Just try and understand them. And finally, be easy on yourself. There is so much guilt that many parents, even I remember feeling that guilt of I'm not spending enough time with my older child. And because it is true, the child had all your attention, and now suddenly there's a new child that has it, and your time is limited. It's not like you have an endless amount of time, as well as you're tired. So even when you have time, you're just so exhausted. So be easy on yourself. It is a transition time. It's not going to last forever. And I really think it is so good for the children to have siblings. So I think it's one of the best things you can give a child is to give them a sibling, because they grow so much. Not just do they have a companion to play with, but even as individuals, they grow and they become far more compassionate, far more kinder, far more understanding of the world around them. I've noticed that my children they play far better with other children as well, because they know how to relate. They have learned that. So I think never regret. Like in the beginning, you'll feel a lot of guilt when you're not able to give the child time. But just think about the bigger picture, and that, this is going to be good for your child in the long run.
Yeah, I think I resonate with everything you just said. I think even for me to be able to just remember these things, right? Remember to be more kind, to be more patient, because we're also all over the place with just how you mentioned, right? Just with time, or just with being so tired, and just everyone around you being so needy. And anyways, you can't give so much of yourself. So yeah, I think those are really key points, and I think that it's so applicable to each and every mother, I think. So my last question before we do one more thing, but my last question is, so like it's so many things that you mentioned, right? You mentioned teamwork between you and your husband. You mentioned just things about being in tune, or just tuned with your kids and understanding their perspectives. So, and the thing is that thoughtful parenting is a lot of hard work, right? And it requires so much of consistency. It requires so much of diligence, in times when you're just like fed up, but you still have to do it. Um, so what's your encouragement to parents, or like what would you like to share from your own experience of just the challenges that you face that you're able to share with us?
I think if there's one thing I have learned, and which my husband again is very good at doing, is thinking big picture. For so many times when you're with your children, it's just the daily routine, and it's the small things, and it's getting their bath and getting their food and doing all those things. And sometimes we lose out on the big picture. And to just remember that whatever we're doing, we're training them. So when we're doing something intentionally for them, or we're trying to teach them something, we may not see the effects immediately, but it's a long-term thing. And to just be patient, that we are all on a journey together. As much as they are growing, we also are growing as parents. So just keep your eyes focused on the big picture, and try and think ahead. So even when we're doing routines for our children, we're doing structure, we're thinking about a certain character development in them. At that moment, it may be frustrating, but if we keep thinking, okay, in 10 years, this is going to happen, or in 20 years, we're hoping this will be inculcated in our child. So just to not keep your eyes on the big picture and what you're doing, and what a big thing it is that you're doing for your child. So I think that is something I would.
So before I end this, Priyanka has written a lot of articles and blogs, right, on kidsjoyschool.com. I think you should definitely check it out. I think one thing that I saw when I was expecting Myra was the thing that you wrote about adjusting, how to help your older adjust to a younger sibling, and I drew a lot of inspiration from that, and so I'm really thankful. And I've written a blog as well on what helped us prepare Aliza for Myra. And so please do check out both these blogs. And you've written some really helpful blogs. Like I remember when I was pregnant with Aliza, Jimith had seen one of your blogs written, I think, a father's perspective. and it was just so, and I think now when I think about it, it's so true.
Actually got my most views. So my husband, you all like me.
That's one of the really beautifully written ones. And I felt like at that point in time, because I think it was released in October and Aliza was born at the end of October, I was just so sweet, and just so much to look forward to. So even in those moments when, she'd be crying or be exhausted, be like, we're going to be her superheroes. We are the ones. So
be happy.
Yeah, and I was just going through your blog. You've written such beautiful things. And I'm sure, and so I'm going to post about it in the description section below. And I think you should definitely watch it. I mean, have a look at it. So yeah, thank you so much, Priyanka.
Thanks, Anna.
For doing this. Really appreciate it. Thank you.